your boss feel about doing business with an official sex offender if he became president again?
Well, who becomes president, of course, is a decision for voters in the United States, and the relationship between the two countries is really important. But in terms of the verdict that we saw yesterday, I think the one thing to resist here is the temptation sometimes, especially in political discussions, to immediately sort of analyse this in terms of what will it do with his chances, will it reinforce people. You've got to remember there's a victim here and there are other victims who are probably watching this programme. Mm-hmm. And what they don't want is when you get a verdict like that, politicians or journalists or this kind of discussion to descend into, electoral chances one way or the other. And I've seen some of that over the last 24 hours and I think we've got to remember there are victims of sexual assault and worse who are watching this who've been scared to come forward, and they'll be watching pretty closely what happens and what the reaction to yesterday's
I get that totally, Mr. McFadden, but also they might also be thinking we wouldn't want our leader to be talking to somebody who thinks it's okay to behave in that fashion.
Well, of course, as I say, who becomes president is a decision for voters in the United States. Mm. The relationship between the UK and the United States is one of the strongest and deepest in the world. It's not just based on who's president and who's prime minister. There's history, there's interests, there's values that runs right through it. And I don't think anything is going to change that sort of depth of that relationship.
Would you do a deal with the Lib Dems in order to get in power?
Do you know, I find this discussion so presumptuous. We're a year out from the election. I can tell you what our aim is, but I don't want to speculate on what the result is going to be. We're aiming for a majority. That's what we hope for. That's what we've achieved in the past. But all this, ifs, buts and maybes, I think the voters watching this will be saying, hang on, listen, if I went down that road, they'd be saying, why are they talking about that when interest rates are probably going to go up tomorrow? I'm still struggling to make ends meet. I think winning trust on those issues is more important than
here's me sitting here wondering why you're dismissing my questions. Is it because you are contemplating doing a deal with the Lib Dems?
No, it's not because of that. It's because I do think that kind of discussion of what happens after is really presumptuous. In fact, you could even call it arrogant, and I don't think politicians should be arrogant. I think they should approach the voters.
You've never met an arrogant politician?
I've met a few, but I think that they should approach the voters with humility because, we want to get a majority government. And I'll tell you more, if we did get a majority government, I would be one of the people the day after that saying, this is such a precious and fragile thing, the trust of the people. I mean, I remember working for Tony Blair many years ago when we had a majority of 179.
I remember.
After the 1997 election. And people would come in and see him and say, oh, you're guaranteed to get elected next time. You can do this, you can do that. He always dismissed that and said, you've got no idea how tough it is to get a majority, how precious it is, and how you've got to treat that with great care. And I think he was right about that. So I do hope for a majority, but I hope for more than one majority because I think after the last 13 years, it's going to take a long time to turn the country round. So
you're saying not just this next election, whenever it might come, but the one after that?
Well, you've got to be ambitious.
Quite ambitious.
It is ambitious, but I'm conscious how tough that is. And my job, along with my boss, Rachel Reeves, is to make sure that we pass the essential trust of being trusted with the public finances, that financial stability is there, that our manifesto is properly costed and funded. So when the Tories bring out these silly dossiers about taxation and borrowing, that they're treated with the derision that they deserve from the public.
What is it about the Lib Dems that you don't agree with?
Look, I haven't gone through their policy programme, A, B and C. I'm not interested in doing that. We'll put a good policy programme forward for the public at the next election. It'll be both realistic and ambitious. And I think that's a good combination so that we offer people change, but we also are honest with them about the time it will take and the economic circumstances that are likely to be inherited by anyone who wins at the next election.
You were, you've literally smashed them at the local elections, 1,000 seats lost, more than 1,000 seats lost. But you still wouldn't get, if that was converted to the general election, you still wouldn't have an overall majority, would you?
Well,
what is it that you have to do?
Well, we've had great results last week. When I think of the places we won in Swindon and Stoke and Plymouth and Medway and many others, and I pay tribute to all the councillors who were elected, all the Labour campaigners and the voters who supported us. And that's given us a good platform. And it's a good platform to aim for a majority. But we know there's still work to do. There's always work to do. That's why I do think we should approach this with some humility. I think it's the right way to go, so that we say to the voters, you've given us a big boost last week through these local elections, which were only in part of the country. They weren't in Scotland, they weren't in Wales, they weren't in London. You've given us a big boost. We're going to now use that to work even harder than before to earn your trust, so that when the next election comes, we get a majority Labour government.
OK. A couple of other things before I let you go. I won't use the acronym, but workers who only work Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, apparently that makes up an acronym. Let's not talk about it. I think you can figure it out.
I can't think what. But...
Yeah. Apparently, there's a boss at AO World. He says he's banning a hybrid working. People should be back in the office now. And if you're working from home, you might as well be working from somewhere in Europe or in India or in Pakistan, and you're out the door.
Well, there's two things there. I don't think you should ban it. I think this can suit a lot of people. It can open up employment opportunities for people who aren't there. And I think some jobs in some circumstances can be done very well in that kind of hybrid way, where you might be in the office or not. Personally, I prefer to be in the office. I'm not a great fan of these Zoom calls and all the rest of it, but...
Is that because the technology is too tricky for you?
Well, I prefer the face-to-face like this, Kay. So there's that. But in terms of, well, you could be working abroad or you could be working anywhere. All these technologies create change. We went through a huge change in how goods were produced, where globalisation meant that physical goods could be produced elsewhere in the world and so on. Technology today, it's not just about one aspect of it, might mean big implications for service industries in a way that previous change meant for manufacturing industries. So I think everyone in politics should be curious about these things, but I don't think we should be banning working from home.
Very briefly before I let you go, this barge, the first of many barges, has just arrived. Does Labour support migrants being kept on those barges?
Look, I think you've got to consult properly with local authorities and local communities about this. That's one of the amendments that we put forward to the immigration bill when it went through Parliament. It's going into starting in the Lords today, and I'm sure that's the kind of amendment that Labour...
So in theory, you support it?
Well, we've got to, with all this temporary accommodation, I've got people in Wolverhampton staying in hotels, and I think the problem with some of this is it's done without proper consultation with the local authorities. You've got to find temporary accommodation, but it's got to be done with some degree of dialogue and consultation with the local authorities. Otherwise, the government is ending up just dumping people around the country.
I know you've got a busy day ahead, so I must let you go. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.